Hello everybody, welcome to another DVD Blu-ray collection video, and today we're talking about shelf number 2. So with that said, let's get started. We'll talk about all of this later. So starting off, we have Bloodwork with Clint Eastwood. This is actually a pretty solid thriller that he did. I believe this came out in like 2002, I believe. Yeah, I think 2002. This was actually kind of a solid movie about a guy who's investigating the... Oh, that's what I remember now. He has the heart of a murder victim through thanks to a transplant. I remember that now. It's been a while since I've seen that. Blue Hawaii. Elvis from 1961. I actually have almost all of Elvis's movies. I almost have all of them, and I hope to review them all at some point in the future. But anyway, this is one of his most notable ones, also with Angela Lansbury. This actually has a really great soundtrack, and I actually prefer this over some of the later Elvis musical comedies. Actually, speaking of which, check this out. This right here is the Elvis collection. I have had this since 2004, and it has, you have Jailhouse Rock, and I have these arranged by chronological order. Jailhouse Rock, It Happened in World's Fair, Viva Las Vegas, Harem Scarum, which is the worst Elvis film I've ever seen, Spin Out, and Speedway. This is a really nice box set. I think this is actually a little bit rare nowadays, but yeah, if you can pick up a copy of his box set, please do. But yeah, let's take these out so you can see them a little better. But yeah, Jailhouse Rock, easily one of his best films and most notable films. It Happened in World's Fair, not a bad movie. Viva Las Vegas, which is awesome, but unfortunately this is like non-anamorphic, which is disappointing for sure. Harem Scarum, one of the worst films I've ever seen. It's utter garbage. Spin Out, it's not bad. And Speedway, which was the first Elvis film I ever saw with Nancy Sinatra. But next up we have the Marilyn Monroe Anniversary Collection. This isn't actually mine, I'm actually borrowing it from a friend of mine, but we have Gentlemen for Poor Blondes, Niagara, which is a very different type of film noir, which is in color, but it has film noir themes. 7 Year Itch, which is one of her most notable films. Let's Make Love, River of No Return, and Marilyn Monroe: The Final Days, which this is actually a documentary talking about the making of her unfinished film, Something's Gotta Give. And yeah, this is a pretty good collection for the most part. Blowout. This is an amazing movie by Brian De Palma. This is fantastic. This is easily one of the best Brian De Palma thrillers I have ever seen. And it's basically sort of like a conspiracy thriller, but it does it beautifully. John Travolta and Nancy Allen. This is fantastic. Please pick up a Criterion edition. Not the DVD like I did. That was a mistake, but yeah, check out that movie. It is, I don't want to give too much away, but it's brilliant. Blue Jasmine, another Woody Allen movie, but one that I think is one of his better films for me. Kate Blanchett, Alec Baldwin, and Sally Hawkins. It's got a decent plot. Not bad. It's fine. It's a fine movie. Not the best, but removing that stupid sticker that gets him away. But Blues Brothers, one of the best comedies ever, with Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi. This is fantastic. This is one of a few SNL type movies that actually worked. Now, as you can see, Dan Aykroyd signed that for me. He went from SNL to doing Blues Brothers and Ghostbusters, so actually he was showing Blues Brothers that day, and it was great, really fun, so absolutely love this movie. Love that movie. Bobby, about the assassination of Bobby Kennedy. It's got a good cast though. Lawrence Fishburne, Anthony Hopkins, Heather Graham, Helen Hunt, William H. Macy, Emilio Estevez, who directed the film, Demi Moore. This is actually a pretty good film. Despite the fictional characters, it actually makes you understand what happened that day a lot more. Actually, this is a Blockbuster exclusive. Oh, The Bourne Ultimatum. The only Bourne movie I saw was Jason Bourne, which is not the greatest, let me tell you. This is like, I don't know what. Why is this in a tin? Why is it like that? Whatever. Actually, it's funny. I actually do have Bourne Supremacy on HD DVD. I'm not kidding. Body of Wise. This is a Ridley Scott movie I still haven't seen yet. I actually haven't. It looks interesting, for sure. Sort of a CIA type thriller. Yeah, it is Ridley Scott. Okay. I haven't actually seen this yet, but it looks interesting, for sure. The Bodyguard, another movie I still haven't seen. Which is weird, I need to do that. Kevin Costner and Whitney Houston. Of course, it's got that famous song, I Will Always Love You, which we all know that song by now. I'm not going to play it because you already know it. This has been on my list for a long time. It's been on my list forever. Boogeyman. Okay, so now we have 3 movies called Boogeyman. The Boogeyman from 1980. Ugh. This one. And then there's the new one that's coming out real soon, which is by Stephen King. It's like, come on, you can't just leave it alone. It's like we have 3 movies calling the same thing. My God. Bon Voyage, Charlie Brown, and Don't Come Back. This movie was stuck in VHS hell for a while, and then they finally put it on DVD, and it's like, now we have all the Peanuts theatrical movies on DVD and Blu-ray to a certain extent. I do want to pick up Waste for Your Wife, Charlie Brown, because I got released too. But that one kind of breaks its own rules when it comes to Peanuts a little bit, but not much so. Oh, Bonnie and Clyde. This is the movie that changed cinema. This is the movie that changed cinema. This is the movie that people talk about when they talk about films, like groundbreaking films, or films that changed the industry. This is one of them. The story of the most notorious bank robbers in history, Warren Beatty and Faye Dunaway. This is a classic. I mean, decently accurate, almost decently accurate, but nevertheless, you cannot deny its impact. Boogie Nights. I love Paul Thomas Anderson. This is probably my favorite film of his, with Mark Wahlberg, Burt Reynolds. I think I talked about this in my Burt Reynolds tribute, so I don't have much to say about that other than it's amazing. Bowling for Columbine. This is a documentary about gun control and gun violence that is it's still timely even today. We still have this issue. In fact, I think it's worse nowadays than when this came out. But this is a very poignant and eye-opening documentary. This is still relevant even now in 2002, but Boyhood. This is a fantastic movie, but I wish I had like the Criterion edition of this, because this bare bones DVD doesn't work. It doesn't do this movie justice. This is an absolute must watch. Patricia Arquette, Ethan Hawke, filmed over a course of 12 years, follows like this family's life, and this is one of Richard Linklater's best movies by far. Just a very poignant film about adolescence and maturing and growing up, and it's fantastic. Braveheart, Best Picture winner in 1995. And I have to say, this is one of a few times where, yes, the movie's historically inaccurate about William Wallace, who defied England, and yeah, I mean, this movie's not. This movie's not very historically accurate. It isn't, but it's a good movie. It is a good movie, and I'm not going to say it's terrible, but yes, the overabundance of inaccuracies do get him away, but I mean, it was made well, that's for sure. Boys Town, oh my God. This is a movie, I couldn't even watch this for the longest time. Long story short, I finally got around to watching it several years ago, and it's a very great drama that it's about Barbara Flanagan, right? He created this school for the boys. I think it's the, blanking on the name of the place now. The school actually still exists today, by the way, but it's a really good movie. I just can't watch it. Breakfast at Tiffany's. This is another classic, but one that I think holds its own. Audrey Hepburn and George Papard. This is a really solid film. Great fashion. Costumes by Edith Head. Yeah, the costumes are great. The story's pretty good. And overall, it's just a really solid film. Minus Mickey Rooney's performance. Breakfast Club. This is one of my favorite films. This is one of my favorite films of all time. A film about these 5 people who are stuck in detention and they don't know anything about themselves, and yet they're stuck there. And over the course of the entire day, they realized they had more in common with each other than they realized. This is my personal favorite John Hughes movie, without a doubt. Breach. This was actually a donation. I saw it once, and I thought it was decent. It's about one of the greatest security breaches in U.S. history, involving, what's his name? Robert Hansen. Yeah, Robert Hansen. True story movie, pretty good. Nothing more to say on that. Breakdown. Kurt Russell, just trying to rescue his wife from these kidnappers who blackmail him. This is solid, and I seriously wonder why this doesn't have a better release, because this is a solid movie that people don't know about. The Breakup, I got this for $1. I'm not kidding. Vince Vaughn and Jennifer Aniston. Not the biggest fan of her, but this isn't a bad movie. It's not a bad movie. It's fine. It's a decent rom-com, but not one of my favorites for sure. Bride of a Monster. You know what? As bad as Ed Wood's films are, they're not bad. They're just cheaply made. You have to understand, Ed Wood had a passion for filmmaking, and he didn't care if his movies sucked or not. He, at the very least, made them. He made them with passion, which is more than I can say for a lot of other films today, actually. His movies aren't that bad. I mean, come on, guys. These movies are, like, not that terrible. I mean, they're really not that bad. It's like when people keep saying that, like, E.T. on Atari 2600 is, like, the worst game ever. It's like, come on. Give the guy a break, you know? He had 6 weeks to make the game. It's like, my God. You know, people get so uptight these days. Bridesmaids. This is a funny movie. And it's not everyone's cup of tea, but it's definitely a funny movie regardless. Kristen Wiig and Melissa McCarthy. Very solid, funny movie. I don't really have much to say about that one. It's a chick flick comedy that works. Bridges in Madison County. This is an underrated Clint Eastwood romantic drama, basically involving these 2 people who meet and they spend a week together, but they realize that they can't stay together forever, and like, it's not that they're not compatible, it's that they both have their own wives to attend to. Yeah, Meryl Streep, Clint Eastwood. I enjoyed this movie. Bridge on the River Kwai. David Lean, like I mentioned earlier, he's a director you should get to know. Best Picture winner in 1957. Great World War II drama with probably one of the most recognizable themes in film history. It was The Colonel's March, I believe it's called. It's where they're like whistling. Basically, Alec Guinness has this, take down this bridge that was built by the Nazis. Oh no, I'm sorry, it was a World War I theme. Oh, okay, so we just used it in this movie. Fine, whatever. Bridget Jones's Diary. I don't like Hugh Grant. I've never liked Hugh Grant's movies. This is one of the better ones. And I dug the whole, like, Bridget Jones is like, it's like a love triangle, but not one that is kind of solid, I suppose. Yeah, I'm just kind of speed running through this so we can get through this a lot easier. But Broadway Melody. MGM's first all-talking, all-singing, all-dancing musical in 1929, which won the Best Picture Oscar that year. Or debatably, it's 1928. Before a chorus line, this movie showed the hardships of being on Broadway. I'm not sure if it holds up well for everybody, but if you want to see how sound musicals got their start, check that out in the Jazz Singer. Brothers, not a bad movie. It's another love triangle, but it's one where Tobey Maguire's stuck in Iraq. He's like held captive. Natalie Portman waits for him, but Jake Gyllenhaal falls in love with her, and this upsets him greatly. So he's stuck there being tortured, and like his girlfriend doesn't even know if he's going to come back alive. And It's kind of decent. Brokeback Mountain, one of the finest romantic dramas out there. I checked this out, and oh my god, I'm surprised I missed out on this one. Released in 2004, this was Ang Lee's staple movie after Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, which I need to pick up for some odd reason why I don't have it. Heath Ledger and Jake Gyllenhaal, basically dealing with homosexuality, and I believe it's during the 60s. 1963, yeah, I was right, okay. And how their lives, are sort of entangled in this, that it's... I don't want to give too much away, but it's amazing. The acting's solid, cinematography's beautiful. Check it out. Brother Bear. I don't remember this one at all. I don't remember. Bruce Almighty. Jim Carrey can be absolutely hilarious. And this is one of his best ones. Basically, he has the powers of God, literally. And he just, yeah, it is brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. It's hilarious. This is a hilarious movie. Morgan Freeman does a great job as well. It's much better than Evan Almighty. Oh my god, that movie was terrible. Brigadoon. When I was a kid, I was raised on the classic MGM musicals, and this is easily one of the best ones. Gene Kelly, Van Johnson, and the Elegant Stitcheries, adapted from the Werner Lowe musical. Actually, the backgrounds, they didn't film it in, I think it's Ireland. They had this background that was painted, and like the background's still there, or at least it's in the hands of a private collector. Next up, we have the Bruce Lee collection. So, no, this is not the Criterion set, although I would like to pick that up. No, this is the original release. It's got all but Enter the Dragon. So we have the Big Boss, also known as Fist of Fury. Fist of Fury, also known as the Chinese Connection. Way of the Dragon, which is also called Return of the Dragon. Game of Death 1 and 2. Which makes no sense why Game of Death 2 is here, because Bruce Lee never finished the first one. So again, it's stupid. They market it as his last movie when it isn't. His last movie was Game of Death, period. But I've never known anyone who wanted to watch Bruce Lee with me. I keep telling myself to check these out, but I don't know why. It's just, sometimes you need to have a large group of people around you to enjoy these a lot better, but never have an opportunity yet. Boy. A documentary that I've had in my collection for so long, and I just need to watch it. And I remember when this had controversy because it was rated R or something, and then it was edited or something, and we still never got that R-rated version. Burnt Offerings. Now, if you don't know what this film is, basically it's a little known haunted house movie. This family inherits this summer rental house or something that was owned by Burgess Meredith, and they're told not to go in the attic, and the longer they're there, the more all this crazy stuff happens, and there's no explanation for it whatsoever. This is not as good as other haunted house movies like The Haunting or The Amityville Horror. Bull Durham, a decent comedy with Kevin Costner and Susan Sarandon. Yeah, Kevin Costner made several baseball-type movies. This one, Field of Dreams, and I think the other one is called For the Love of the Game. Did this get a Criterion release? I don't know, but it was kind of a funny movie. It's kind of funny, kind of lighthearted. Well, not lighthearted, but it's fine. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, one of the best westerns you will ever watch. This movie was directed by George Roy Hill, who would also do The Sting. It's got music by Burt Bacharach, who won the Oscar for the song Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head. Cinematography's gorgeous, the story's great. Yeah, this is just a really solid western with a style all its own. And this was one of the game changers for westerns. One of the game changers. Bad and Macabre and Mrs. Miller. Bug. Oh my god, this movie is so crazy, but it's good. The plot of this movie, these bugs come up out of the earth, and they latch onto your ear, and they burn your ear. Oh my god, this movie's silly. This was directed by Janos Schwark. He was a production assistant on the first Jaws and directed Jaws 2. Next up is Buried. Ryan Reynolds stuck in a box for an hour and a half. I don't know what else to say about that one. It's been a while since I've seen that. Bullet, one of the best. This is great. Steve McQueen up against a charged Dodger. This is brilliant stuff. Robert Vaughn as well. Filmed on the streets of San Francisco with one of the best, probably the first car chase in film history, taking place on the streets of San Francisco. Ushered in a new era, the car chase movie. Actually, that was one of the first action movies too. Burn After Reading, not one of my favorite Coen Brothers comedy, but it has a decent premise for the most part. It's not great, but it's not terrible either. It's got a great cast though, but I just didn't remember it being that funny. Go watch Fargo instead. Alright, next we have this Buster Keaton box set. So we have, these are his short films. So these are his sound shorts that were released between 1939 and 1941. Yeah, this was when his career was kind of in a bit of a decline, but not so much so. But it was solid. I mean, I'm trying to get more Buster Keaton stuff, like Charlie Chaplin and Harold Lloyd, and a lot of it's silent comics, so I'm trying to get more of those. Speaking of comedians, love this movie. I talked about my love for this film before, Buttons. Now I watch this every Christmas. My idol, Dick Van Dyke, Angela Lansbury, Jane Seymour. This is a brilliant, inspiring film, and I encourage anybody to watch this at least once. This is a brilliant, underrated musical. It's very inspirational, and it's absolutely magnificent. Butterfield 8 with Elizabeth Taylor. I haven't seen this yet. I know, it's surprising. I haven't seen this yet. Bye Bye Birdie, the movie. Speaking of my idol, the film adaptation of Bye Bye Birdie is vastly different from the stage version. And by vastly different, I mean, like, it's very different. But it's still a good movie nonetheless. It's still a good movie of a stage musical. So, yeah, I wonder why. I don't know why Chia Rivera decided not to do the film version. Speaking of film version, Cabaret. This is a fantastic adaptation of the stage musical by Bob Fosse. He also directs it. This is a brilliant movie right here. And basically all the musical sequences are done in a realistic way. And by that I mean the musical scenes are only in the club where most of the movie takes place. In the stage version, there are a couple musical numbers outside of the club, but in the movie there's only one number. But I think he tried to make it realistically, but I don't know. But yeah, this is a fantastic musical. The choreography by Bob Fosse, the staging, the lighting, it's brilliant. Cabin Fever. Eli Roth, I'm not the biggest nut of. But this was not a bad movie. Take the claustrophobic nature and like the whole cabin in the woods thing from Evil Dead and Cabin in the Woods, and have her be some kind of like a plague virus or something that's going around. And you have this movie, Caddyshack, one of the funniest movies. But this movie was basically like, they took a sport that not very many people were into, and they made a funny, smart comedy out of it. Oh my god, great cast. Chevy Chase, Rodney Dangerfield, Ted Knight, Bill Murray. This is just a really funny movie, and I absolutely adore this film. And it's one of the funniest comedies you ever watch. Cadillac Records. This is about the formation of Chess Records and how they launched the careers of many prominent blues artists, including Etta James, Muddy Waters, Chuck Berry. What's that guy's name now? Whittle Walter, that's his name, yeah, Whittle Walter. And then we have the Buddy Holly story. Speaking of music biopics, this is about Buddy Holly, who, by the time he was 22, he had like many chart-topping hits, including like Every Day, Battle Beaver Day. Next up, we have The Champ with Wallace Beery and Jackie Cooper. I think you're noticing a theme here. King Vidor production, but Wallace Beery tied for the Best Actor Oscar. The other guy who won was Frederick March for Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Jaws. A movie about a killer boar from Korea. This is just lunacy. I have another movie called Boar, which was a Shudder exclusive, but I'm meaning to watch that. But this is Korean, yeah. It's stupid, but it's fun. Cannonball Run, another action classic with Burt Reynolds. This was actually based on a actual cross-country race that did take place at one point. Yeah, Hal Needleman. He worked with Burt Reynolds several times. And this is probably one of their best films together. Actually, there's a sequel, but I've never actually seen the sequel. And up here we have VHS. This is an interesting anthology horror film. For some reason, I couldn't find a Blu-ray of this. I don't know why. But this is actually kind of creepy. Like, the segments that they use in this movie are pretty creepy. But not like stupid or whatever, but it actually works. So check that out. Go check that in VHS 2. But Taylor of Panama. It's been a while since I've seen this, but I think it's like an espionage thriller. Like that? Yeah, it's an espionage thriller. Not a bad movie. Not much to say on that one. It's Complicated with Meryl Streep and Alec Baldwin. Not a bad rom-com. Not terrible. I've seen better. But it's okay. It's an okay movie. I just didn't have much connection with it, to be honest. A Most Wanted Man. This is a great espionage thriller with Philip Seymour Hoffman. I think he's trying to play somebody from, he's playing a German intelligence agent. Oh my god, I didn't even realize that. This was actually a true story movie, but one that actually gets the job done. And it's a really pretty decent film. Like, the ending of a movie, like, when you get to the ending of this movie, it sort of messes with your head. Because, like, the whole movie was primarily about them trying to find this guy before it was too late. But, once you get to that part, you know when it happens, you realize that everything kind of fell backwards on its head, you know? So it's like, it messes with your mind, but it works. Nanny McPhee. Nanny McPhee tries too hard to be Mary Poppins and flops. Nanny McPhee tries to impress the kids, but again, it's like a carbon copy of Mary Poppins with none of the wit, heart, or soul behind it. And they made a sequel. I got nothing to say. Taffin, a decent Pierce Brosnan action movie. I think it's like an part action, part with a touch of comedy here and there. It's different. Before Pierce Brosnan was James Bond, he did a bunch of like these action movies. They weren't the best, but they weren't terrible ever. Yeah, it's not a bad movie. Pixels. One of the very few Happy Madison movies I like. I don't have much to say. I did a whole video on this when it came out, but I'm not the biggest craze. None of us won. This was before the Super Mario Bros. Movie, the one we got recently, and yeah, this hasn't, I don't know, it's fine. It's fine, it's not terrible, but whatever. And on the back here, I'm not going to take these out right now, but anyway, you have Child Bride from 1938, Robin Crusoe of Clipper Island, Croc from some cheesy B movie, I don't know about how that is. Legendary pirate movies, which this has, this is like public domain pirate movies, so you have like Captain Kidd from I don't even know, Son of Monte Cristo, and Long John Silver's Return to Treasure Island, which was the sequel to Treasure Island. And next up, we have Camelot. This is actually a really good run-and-roll musical, and I was actually in this at one point, and it's a good show. Of course, in the movie version, I'm always dazzled by this one. Just but the amount of work that went into it, just the whole magical feeling of it. Yeah, it's probably the most lighthearted take on the King Arthur story you'll ever hear. And you have Richard. The film version has Richard Harris and Vanessa Redgrave substituting for Richard Burton and Julie Andrews. Also, you have Franco Nero and David Hemmings. It's a pretty good adaptation. Actually, let's take this out so we can move a little better. Capote, about Truman Capote when he was writing In Cold Blood, and he went to visit the two criminals who committed the murder. I'm blanking on what year it was. I think it was like 1967. Philip Seymour Hoffman commands the screen as Truman Capote, and he does a fantastic job. Captain America Civil War. I've been trying to get all the MCU films. I mean, now that Marvel is pretty much kind of going downhill, you know, just turning out movies like an assembly line and just kind of not being what they were. Looking back on the Infinity Saga and seeing how it evolved, it's actually kind of... I've been meaning to do that, just like watch all things Marvel, but it would get exhausting. But Captain America Civil War is the best Captain America film by far. I mean, that movie is just a stellar, absolutely one of the best superhero films. I could go on, but we got a lot of movies to talk about, so let's just keep moving. Captain Blood. Oh yes, another Errol Flynn and Olivia de Havilland classic. This is one of the best swashbuckling adventure stories outside of the Adventures of Robin Hood, but I think it's one of the best ones. And of course, in this one, you also have Basil Rathbone, who another Adventures of Robin Hood connection, and directed by one of my favorite directors of all time, Michael Curtiz, who also directed Adventures of Robin Hood. Captain Phillips, the true story of Captain Richard Phillips and how he was held hostage by Somalian pirates who they took over his cargo ship, and over the course of I think a day and a half or something, the movie kind of portrays him as a hero, and he kind of was in a way. He kind of was a hero in a sense, but Richard has said, but he was just a simple guy who made the right calls, and I think that's fair. But this is still a really good movie. It's been a while since I've seen it, though. Carefree, Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers again, this time with the music and lyrics of Irving Berlin. Doovie Yam. Oh yeah, that was a hit. Mark Sandwich directed this, he directed a bunch of musicals. This is one that isn't as well known, but it's still pretty good. I think I recommend Top Hat and Royal Wedding and Swing Time. Carol. This is an underrated romantic drama about these two women who are basically bored of their wives, and so they decide to go on a road trip together, and they end up falling in love with one another. It's another movie dealing with homosexuality, but it's done really well, and Cate Blanchett and Rooney Mara steal the show in that one. Carousel. This was actually a donation. Not one of my favorite Rodgers and Hammerstein musicals, but it's certainly better than I'll give it credit for. I mean, Rodgers and Hammerstein, they try to sneak in themes, let's put it that way. They try to sneak in themes. So, in this case, it's about domestic abuse. Yeah, I'm not even kidding. I'm not even kidding. This movie has elements of domestic abuse in it, but it has a couple good songs in here, especially You'll Never Walk Alone. That is one of my favorite songs ever. Carrie. To me, there will always be one Carrie with Sissy Spacek and Piper Laurie. And this is easily one of my favorite horror films. I tend to watch this more than all the other adaptations. There's only two other ones, one from 2002 and one from 2013. This is the one I go to the most because it was superbly directed by Brian De Palma. It had the right cast, it had the right elements of suspense, and overall it was just some people think it's a horror movie. Well, it kind of is at the end. And the rest of the movie is basically like a drama with telekinesis. And yes, I am a fan of the musical. The original version, not the 2012 revival. Carnival of Souls. This is a movie that I tried watching one time and I just couldn't get into it. I think it's about a woman who is like, I don't know, she's like in a trance or something. And yeah, I don't know this one. I mean, I heard it was good, but I just haven't gotten around to that one. I mean, I've tried, but I don't know. Cars. Oh yes, Cars. The first Cars wasn't terrible, but it wasn't what I call great entertainment, I guess is a better word to use, but this is not one of Pixar's best movies. By far, I think themes are a little predictable, and I don't know, it was okay. I did see Cars 2, and that was the first review I ever made before I took it down. Casablanca. Okay, this is gonna sound crazy, but guess what? I haven't seen this all the way through yet. This Best Picture winner in 1943, let me put it this way. This is one of the greatest films, period, of all time. Don't get me wrong, this is one of the greatest films ever made. I just haven't sat down and actually watched this all the way through. I don't know why. I don't have any idea. Maybe it's the DVD I have. Maybe it's the fact that I just haven't had time because I get distracted with movies. That's one downside of being a film historian and film buff. But the thing is, I just haven't... Like, I really want to watch it. I really do. Don't get me wrong. I really want to watch it. It's just, again, it's just one I just haven't gotten around to. And I know... Casting's great. Humphrey Bogart, Ingrid Bergman, Paul Heinried. Who's the piano player in this? Want to get on his name. Also, Sidney Greenstreet and Peter Lorre is in here. And here's another one I've been meaning to get around to. Casino. Martin Scorsese again. This is one that I think a lot of people know. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. Yeah. Casino Royale, this was directed by the same guy who directed The Mask of Zorro. He brought back not only Zorro from the dead, but also James Bond. And I remember watching this and kind of enjoying it. But then again, it's been a long time since I've seen this. I don't remember that well, but I know it was the first Bond novel that got published. Castaway, this is one of Tom Hanks' best movies. By far, this is one of Tom Hanks' best movies. Stuck on an island all by himself with nothing but a volleyball. And very inspiring film. It's very hard to be the only actor in the movie. It really is hard. Because you have to carry the whole film. It's very difficult. If you like Castaway, check out Robert Redford in All Is Lost. The two are very similar to one another about two people being stranded. Cat Ballou. This is an underrated Western comedy. I know everybody talks about McClintock and Blazing Saddles, but check this one out too. Jane Fonda and a dual performance by Lee Marvin, who won Best Actor. Burby's musical sequences by Nat King Cole and... Who's that guy again? Stubby K, yeah. They provide musical interludes for this film. Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. Tennessee Williams is no stranger to controversy. Being openly gay, his plays often include gay themes in his works, but every time they got adapted for the screen, they were always censored. But nevertheless, they were classics. Cat on a Hot Tin Roof and A Streetcar Named Desire are the most notable ones. This one has Elizabeth Taylor, Paul Newman, and Burl Ives. This is really good. This is a really good play, really good movie. Check it out. Cats. This is the filmed version that was made when Cats was about to close on Broadway. And I gotta say, this is one of my favorite musicals. This is easily one of my favorite musicals of all time. I absolutely like this film, and I like how they filmed it. And yes, I have seen the movie, the one that Tom Hooper did. Let me put it this way: there are some things you can never unsee, and that film is a perfect example of uncanny images that make you cringe. Bad direction, and just, oh god. Imagery you can never get out of your head. Catch Me If You Can. Another underrated Steven Spielberg movie about Frank Abagnale Jr., who I think he posed as a pilot but I think he was a con artist, and Tom Hanks is this guy chasing after him. It's been a while since I've seen that. Change of Habit. Elvis's final acting film and acting role in 1969 after he was just done with films and acting in general because he never got the chance to really act. And this one is one of his best ones, but by the time this movie came out, it was too little too late. And yeah, great songs in here. It's actually kind of a good story too. Except for this one part in the movie that I really object to. Changeling, one of Clint Eastwood's best films. This is a true story about a woman whose son goes missing, and blanking her name. Christine Collins. Yeah, Christine Collins has a son, and the son went missing. The police found him, but then she tells him, "No, this is not my son." And then everybody calls her crazy because they were like, "Okay, we found your son. What more do you want?" But throughout her entire life, she never stopped looking for her son. And very inspiring woman. I believe this was during the chicken coop murders. I believe. Yeah, I think it was. I believe it was the chicken coop murders. But that's a great movie. And everyone to check out Changing Lanes with Ben Affleck and Samuel L. Jackson. Two people meet on an intersection, and they can never get away from one another. That's basically what it's about. But there's a lot more substance to it than that. It's really well done. Charade, one of my favorite thrillers. I tried to find my Criterion edition, but it was unavailable for whatever reason. But this is one of the best thrillers that I've seen. Cary Grant and Audrey Hepburn light up a show with this dubious plot involving people who are after Audrey Hepburn. Cary Grant trying to protect her, but he has secrets himself. I don't want to give anything away, but this is a really solid thriller. You need to watch that. Chariots of Fire, Best Picture winner 1981. It's a true story of these two brothers who are competing in the Olympics. I think it's the 1924 Olympics, I believe. I believe it's the 1924 Olympics, Summer Olympics. Which is funny, I watch this every time the Summer Olympics are on, which is interesting. But it's a really good movie. Not to mention the score by Vangelis is iconic. Charlie's Angels, the movie. This wasn't terrible. I think the show's okay. I've seen the first season. First season is good. After that, it's like, whatever. But the movie does a decent job. But the problem is, this is another example where something's successful, make sequels out of it, and there's this, Full Throttle, and the Elizabeth Banks movie, which I still haven't seen, but I heard, like, negative things about it. But, I don't know. Haven't seen the Elizabeth Banks one yet. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. A terrible remake of a classic that, I mean, it wasn't horrible, but it wasn't great. It was just average. Not the worst I've seen. Charlotte's Web. God, I haven't seen this in a long time. This is a movie that you're either going to like it or not. I know people like for live action remake more, but I haven't seen this in so long. Here's a sad one. Charlie. Cliff Robinson plays somebody I believe has autism, and the scientists come up with this, like, cure of sorts, but it has a side effect to it. And yeah, it's kind of a downer, but it's well acted. I think it's one of the first films to depict autism, I think. Or somebody who with an intellectual disability. I'm not sure exactly, but that's a sad one, but it's a good one. Cheaper by the Dozen. Oh, I know that. That's Steve Martin. No. This is the original. Not that Steve Martin crap. With Curtin Webb and Marina Loy. This is what you should be watching. This needs more exposure. I don't know why it doesn't have enough exposure. Seriously, don't watch that stupid Steve Martin thing. I don't even know if it's Steve Martin, but who cares? Chicago. This is a fantastic musical. Bob Fosse musical. This is when they made the film version, they really tried to make it work, to make it... They tried real hard to make it feel like an experience. And not just that, but have a great story behind it. And in turn, it won the Best Picture Oscar of 2002. Catherine Zeta-Jones, Renee Zellweger, Richard Gere, John C. Reilly. This is just amazing. Absolutely love that. Definitely one of the movies I think that brought back the movie musical to me. Child's Play. The first time I saw Chucky was when I was 14, and on TV was Seed of Chucky. Long story short, it was around 10 in the morning, and when I got up, literally the first thing that was on TV was Seed of Chucky. Seed of Chucky was starting, and I watched the entire thing, even though I was too young to watch it. And yeah, it was my first exposure to Chucky. Then, years later, I saw the first Child's Play, and then I saw the reboot last year. So I've seen only 3 of the 8 movies, and the first one is easily the best. First Child's Play is the best Chucky movie. At least it takes itself seriously. It's not like goofy like Seed of Chucky or the other films were, but it works. Chicken Run. Oh, Aardman, where have you been? Where have you been? Where have you been, Aardman? Now you're doing Shaun the Sheep. What are you doing? Let's take a moment to reflect on this one. It's good to a certain extent, but believe it or not, this movie is an allegory. An allegory for what? I'll let you take a guess. Children of a Lesser God. This is an underrated romance film with Mari Madwin and William Hurt. This is a film that deals with the deaf community in a very honest way. Actually, before Sound of Metal, this was one of the few movies to depict people who are deaf, and it does it really well. And not to mention, they try to make it sort of a romance film at the same time, a romantic drama, but it works. It works. Oh, Children of a Corn, this one. No. I don't think this movie's scary. I find it it was okay. Oh my god, I actually never noticed those kids in the background till now. Basically, dealing with cults. If you want to know what type of horror films scare me, any horror movie that deals with cults frighten me. They scare me. This one wasn't one of them. I mean, Linda Hamilton's in here. Come on. What are you doing? Whatever. Yeah, I just don't find this one scary, to be honest. It doesn't grab me, per se. Alright, next we have one of these 50 movie packs. I've got 2 of these. This one and another one, which we'll get to later. This one was, I believe, the first one I ever bought. And you'd be surprised how many films are in the public domain. You'd be surprised. I mean, look at this. Lady Frankenstein. What else? Delta Times 5, which is basically like The Omen, just not as good. Horrors of Spider Island, which is one of the worst films I've ever seen. Silent Night, Bloody Night. Deep Red, which is Dario Argento. I didn't even know that till now. I actually saw Deep Red, and it actually was pretty decent. Bad Taste, which is Peter Jackson. A lot of B stuff, but some of these box sets do have a couple A-list movies. I don't know how I feel. I actually still haven't seen every film in this set, to be honest. And that's a thing. You're never going to be able to watch every movie that's on these 50 movie packs. You're just never going to. You buy them for maybe 2 or 3 movies that you've seen. You don't buy them typically to watch every movie that's on there. Typically. If you want to try it, that's cool. But most of them are garbage anyway, so it's like, why bother? But China Syndrome. When this came out, nobody had any idea that a nuclear accident would happen. And 12 days after this movie came out, the 3 Mile Island incident happened. This movie was a warning. I don't think that's a coincidence. It's not a coincidence that happened. But this is a great thriller with Jack Lemmon, Michael Douglas, Jane Fonda. One of the best thrillers, definitely. Check that out. Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, this is one of my favorite musicals. I understand, but like, this is amazing. A guy, my idol, Dick Van Dyke, as an inventor, who invents a flying car. That is awesome. Sally Ann Howes is in this as well. But man, this movie brings me so much joy. I cannot tell you how joyful this movie is. This is probably, if you want a movie that'll make you happy, watch Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. This is solid gold right here. Love it. Chisholm. This is a decent film with the Duke. This takes place during the Lincoln County War of 1878. Yeah, 1878. For whatever reason, the documentary on here says 1858, which is so wrong. But it's a good Western, for the most part. Christine. Another Stephen King movie, only this time it actually manages to be a little scary. A movie about a car that's alive. There have been a couple other movies like this. One was The Car in 1977, and before that there was a TV series that was a flop called, I think it was My Mom's a Car or something like that. But this is easily the best of them, I guess. And I think there's another movie like this. It's called Super Hybrid, which I've never seen it, but I heard mixed things about it. Chronicles of Narnia, Lion, Witch, and Wardrobe is a fantastic fantasy film written by a great author, C.S. Lewis. And out of the, I think there were like 12 books, they only made 3 movies. Why'd you stop him? They're not even in order. Yeah, but the first one will always be great. The first one will always be good. There's no question about that. And I gotta say, the imagination that was put into the story is good. I never cared for Prince Caspian, and I certainly don't care for Voyage of a Dawn Treader. Although I haven't seen that one. It's like they just stopped after that one because they're like, oh, people are not interested anymore. There's like 12 novels. Get on that, somebody. Chronicles of Riddick, I don't even know why I have this. Over an hour of additional bonus content. Thank you, Best Buy exclusive. Thank you, Best Buy exclusive. I don't know why I have that. But just to let you know, there's 3 Riddick movies. Pitch Black, Chronicles of Riddick, and Riddick. And I don't have either or seen any of them. Cimarron. This is one of the early sound westerns from 1930, Best Picture winner that year, and one of only 3 westerns to win that award. The other 2 being Dancing with Wolves and Unforgiven. This is actually a decent film about the 1889 land rush that took place in Oklahoma. Richard Dix and Irene Dunn. Cinderella. There's only one Cinderella for me. And, I mean, yeah, the live action one was okay. But if you want a better live action Cinderella movie, watch the Rodgers and Hammerstein musical. It was a made-for-TV musical that aired in around 1965 with Leslie Ann Warren. Yeah, I know it has one of the worst effects in film history, but it's better than Disney doing what they're doing. Oh god, they went downhill so bad. But this is a classic. This will always be a classic, without question. Will always be a staple of Disney's great era when they actually mattered. Citizen Kane, which I just heard this got a Criterion release. What an honor to one of the greatest films of all time. There is absolutely no question the mastery that Orson Welles put into this. And he did all this by the time he was, I think, 24. He was 24 when he made this. This is easily one of cinema's greatest films by far. It used a lot of interesting camera techniques versus one guy who made a Napoleon movie that had similar innovative camera techniques, but the way that Orson Welles utilized different types of techniques to create a story is really fascinating. And also the film that was loosely based on this well-known newspaper tycoon. I'm blanking on his name right now, but this is easily one of cinema's great treasures. City Heat, not a bad movie with Burt Reynolds and Clint Eastwood. It's like a buddy cop movie, but set during the Prohibition era. Not bad. Oh, these Disney classic sets. So this has 4 films, only one of which I've seen. Darby O'Gill, The Little People, Sean Connery, The Gnome-Mobile, The One and Only Genuine Original Family Band, and The Happiest Millionaire. Happiest Millionaire is pretty bad. It was too long. It was just slow. And you could just tell that Disney was starting to go downhill with that film, so. And up next, we have The Comic. Also with my idol, Dick Van Dyke. You also have Mickey Rooney. This was done by Carl Reiner, who also worked on the Dick Van Dyke Show. And this movie was sort of modeled after Stan Laurel, in a way. If this is a rare movie, it's kind of hard to find, but if you find it, you'll find it under the Sony Pictures Choice Collection. Up next, we have Clambake, Elvis, 1967. This is pretty dumb, but it's not the worst film. It's not the worst Elvis film I've seen. It really isn't. It's not that great, especially when you take into consideration that Elvis notoriously said it was the worst film he ever did, and pretty much was bestrafed by broke the canvas back, but I'll be honest, it really wasn't that horrible. It was just painfully mediocre. Calamity Jane, my second favorite Doris Day movie outside of Pillow Talk. Yeah, not the most accurate depiction of Calamity Jane in the world, but you know what? Honestly, it was a lot of fun and enjoyable, and it's got decent songs in it, also with Howard Keel, and it was enjoyable. And up next, we have Clash of the Titans. Yes, one of my favorite films. Clash of the Titans, the stop-motion animation by Ray Harryhausen is nothing short of amazing. I will never forget when I first saw this. It was actually in science class in junior high, and I remember like loving the heck out of this and just being in awe because we were taking a Greek mythology at the time, and this was perfect viewing. And I absolutely adore this film and will never get tired of it. Love Clash of the Titans. Same can't be said for a remake. This is one of these Blockbuster cases, which when Blockbuster was going under, they were selling these off. So I've got like a bunch of them actually. I might upgrade these at some point, but I'll keep a few for nostalgia's sake. But this movie is not very good. It's just kind of middle of the road, mediocre. It's not. And look at that. That's not the Kraken. Looks nothing like it. But this movie is not great. And it's in these Blockbuster cases, they didn't have any bonus features, so all you got was a menu that said press play. Yeah, that movie was not very good. I've seen it twice. Next, we have his classic horse film set. So we have Black Beauty, the 1994 version, National Velvet with Mickey Rooney and Elizabeth Taylor, Story of Seabiscuit, and International Velvet. And none of these I've seen yet. Here's another one that's been on my list for God knows how long, Cleopatra. This is a film, but one of the films that changed cinema and how it was made. The problem is, this movie is 4 hours long. I can sit through a 4-hour movie, but the problem is time. That's a thing. I just need to find the right time to actually watch this. But yeah, it is a classic. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. Then again, like, I do know the backstory behind the movie. Like, they were filming in one location, and then Elizabeth Taylor had to move the whole production elsewhere, which cost money. And even after that, it didn't really recuperate a lot of its profits. Clerks 2. I got this for $1. The first Clerks is really hilarious. Love that film. I haven't seen this yet. I think it takes place in a fast food joint or something. I don't know. Koi Painter. A nice Sylvester Stallone actioner. This is pretty enjoyable. And yes, you have John Lithgow as the villain. I don't have much to say about this one, to be honest. I think it's a pretty solid Sylvester Stallone actioner. I got nothing. I mean, I guess I could say something about it. I thought it was enjoyable, but I guess some of the plot elements are a little bit predictable, but I think it's an overall good time, most part. Clint Eastwood. You know, I'm a fan of Clint Eastwood, and this box set here is pretty good. The American Icon collection. This has 4 films. Point Misty for Me, which I still haven't seen yet. The Ica section, which was really boring. Let me tell you, I was not a fan of that one at all. Kogan's Bluff, it was okay. And then But Beguiled, which is a really interesting thriller. I mean, I guess all of these are thrillers in a way, but I've seen most of the films in that set. Close Encounters of the Third Kind, one of Steven Spielberg's best. And I heard there exist other cuts besides this. I don't even know if this is the theatrical cut or the director's cut. Like, it says director's cut, but I don't know which one because there's like 3 of them. And I do want to get that box set that has all of them. This is a classic. I just haven't seen this in a long time. Of course, it is a staple of sci-fi, not just, and it's just a staple of sci-fi, period. Cloverfield. Okay, I gotta be honest, I saw this in the theater, and my mom and I were watching it, and there was a point in the movie where she just, like, walked out, and I later learned that a lot of people walked out during this movie. It's basically a monster movie with the whole found footage gimmick as a way of trying to tell its story. And yes, it has a young TJ Miller. It is shaky cam, oh please, you know. It actually was kind of enjoyable, to be honest, for me. But I only recommend you watch it twice. After that, it gets really boring. I've seen it 4 times. As if, enjoy Clueless. Clueless is a really enjoyable movie. Actually, this was based on Jane Austen's Emma, to a certain extent. Or it might have been Sense and Sensibility, I don't know, whatever. Alicia Silverstone, Brittany Murphy. I'm blanking on who that one actress is. I'm blanking on her name right now. And yes, we have a very young Ant-Man, Paul Rudd. Coal Miner's Daughter. This is a great film about Loretta Lynn, who grew up near the Appalachia, and she was raising kids, and by the time she was like 17, and she ended up becoming a country sensation, thanks in part due to Patsy Cline. This is a really solid film. Actually, it's funny. My grandfather also grew up near Appalachia, but here's the thing. They were 17 miles apart from one another. I'm not kidding. They were 17 miles apart from one another, and it's really interesting to hear that. But this is a really well done. Sissy Spacek does her own singing in it, and she does a really good job. Like, she won Best Actress. It's funny, my grandfather and Loretta Lynn had they lived in Appalachia. Or at the very least, they lived kind of near there. But Coconuts. Oh, is this one with, oh my god, I'm trying to think of which one. I did see Duck Soup. I did see that one. But is this one with, oh god, I'm blanking on it. Oh, it's that woman who, Margaret Dermott, yeah. I'm blanking on the movie it was. It was either Duck Soup or, but it's the one where, she's like, where Groucho Marx was asking her, like, where's your husband? And she's like, why, he's dead. I bet he's just using it as an excuse. I'm trying to think if it was either Duck Soup or the Coconuts. I'm trying to think if it was one of the two. Because I've only seen, like, 2 or 3 of the Marx Brothers works, but Cocoon and Cocoon the Return. I don't remember either. I don't remember. Cold Mountain, this is a really great Civil War drama. With Renee Zellweger, who won Best Supporting Actress, Jude Law, and Nicole Kidman. This is ow. But no, this is a really solid drama right here. It's not really about the Civil War, but it takes place around it. And it's a really solid drama with great acting, a decent plot, and overall it's just a really good film. And certainly one that should not be underestimated. That's a solid film. And here's another good one, Collateral, by Michael Mann. 2 people caught in the middle of a crossfire. Jamie Foxx is a taxi driver, Tom Cruise is a hitman. They're stuck in a game that they can't get out of. They're stuck in a role that they are trying desperately to escape, but they realize that they can't get away from one another. and they're caught in this situation, but they can't get themselves out of. The Color of Money, the sort of spiritual sequel to The Hustler, which we'll get to later. Paul Newman and Tom Cruise. Paul Newman reprising his Fast Eddie. Well, yeah, underrated Martin Scorsese. The Color Purple. Oh yes, this movie. Steven Spielberg directing the Alice Walker. I thought it was fine. To be honest, I thought it was fine. I did have some story issues though. But other than that, I felt like it was well handled, or at least subject matter. And yes, that is Whoopi Goldberg in her first film. Danny Glover is like his abusive husband, and I always kept wondering, like, she was with him in story. She's with him for like 30 years. Why didn't she leave? Like, why didn't she leave? A good drama, to say the least. Congo. I'm blanking. Is this the one with like they go into the Congo jungle and they go into the jungle and they're trying to find? It's yeah, it's been a while since I've seen this one. I don't remember that well. Also, this one, Conquest of the Planet of the Apes. This was more darker than the other Planet of the Apes movies. This one was released in 1972, and certainly it was a film that really. I mean, I've seen all the Apes movies, and I do want to get that box set that has all of them, but this one was probably the darkest of the original series, and it works. I mean, it was certainly reminiscent of the riots that took place during 1968. It was very reminiscent of that. Oh yes, this movie. This movie is so infamous. There's absolutely no way you can justify it. No way. There's no way you can try. This, The Conqueror, the Duke John Wayne is playing Genghis Khan, which already that's whitewashing, but it gets worse. This movie right here was produced by Howard Hughes and was directed by musical actor Dick Powell. This movie was shot on a nuclear testing site. And the cast and crew were lied to, saying that it was safe when it wasn't. As a result of this, 91 cast and crew members out of, I think maybe it was like 150 or 180, I'm not sure the exact number. Out of those, 91 of them got some form of cancer. And it was all thanks to this movie. So this movie is so infamous that hardly anybody wants to show it. And I own a copy of this movie. This movie is so... I think I tried watching it once, and I just kept thinking, oh, wow. Yeah, I don't think there's ever been a good Genghis Khan movie. It doesn't even really have, like, that good of a release, so whatever. But Conspirator. This is one of my favorite films. A historically accurate, honest portrayal of the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. And the people who conspired to murder him in Mary Surratt's boarding house. And that Mary Surratt was, they say that Mary Surratt was kind of the one who allowed it to happen, because the people who conspired to Abraham Lincoln's assassination, and they met at her boarding house. And while the men who did it were tried, Mary Surratt was also tried, and it was actually she ended up becoming the first woman to be executed. And the movie follows James McAvoy as this, I'm blanking on his name, Frederick Atkin. Yeah, Frederick Atkin, he defended her. The charge was conspiracy of murder, President Abraham Lincoln. This is a very, very accurate film, and this was made in part by the American Film Corporation, and they specialized in bringing history to life, much more than these big studios would. And this is a very rock solid drama. Like, seriously, I know a lot about the conspiracy to murder Abraham Lincoln. I know about that. Alright. The Constant Gardener. a decent thriller with Ray Fiennes and Rachel Weisz, who won Best Supporting Actress. It's been a while since I've seen this, but I think it was about, I think he's trying to find out a guy who, killed his wife, I think. I could be wrong, it's been a while since I've seen that. Constantine, I don't even know what this is. Is this DC? Yeah, it was a DC. It was based on a DC comic, okay. I don't know what this is, I haven't seen it. If any of you guys know what that is, please let me know. Not that I'm urging to see it or anything, but I'm just curious, like, what Constantine's even about. Control Room. This is actually a pretty good documentary about how the United States media and Arab terrorists are basically one and the same, and how, like, and Burmese people who were known as the real-lifers, that's what they're called. They're called real-lifers. They were the ones who were reporting the situation going on in Afghanistan when it was, I think it was after 9/11, or it might have been before or after 9/11, when the Western and Arab worlds united, when the Western and Arab worlds became together, primarily because of the news, them reporting the news on what was going on. So it's an interesting documentary for sure. The Conversation, an underrated Francis Ford Coppola thriller about surveillance, and it does a pretty good job at that. Gene Hackman, John Cazale. This is a decent film. I'd say check that out when you get around to it. Next, we have an underrated one, Bakur, with William H. Macy. Basically, William H. Macy plays a guy who's stuck in Vegas. He can't leave. Vegas has become his prison until he meets Maria Bello, who finally makes him happy. But the trick is, how does he get out of Vegas? And what happens when you make Vegas a prison? Commanding performance by Alec Baldwin, good performance by William H. Macy and Maria Bello. Interesting themes. It definitely shines. Underrated, for sure. Alright, next we have Cool Hand Luke. This is a fantastic Paul Newman movie, also with George Kennedy. This is a film about a guy who was put in prison, but he's a nonconformist. And yes, there are some religious allegories in the film, Christian allegories in the film, but nevertheless, this is a really good prison drama, and I gotta say, if you liked films like The Great Escape and Papillon, you'll like that. Cop and a Half, I talked about this film before in my Burt Reynolds tribute. Again, it's not a great film, but I have to say, I was kind of surprised by this one. I mean, it's not great, mind you, but, you know, it's not that great of a movie. It's horribly problematic, but I still get a kick out of it. It's not that horrible. I've seen worse, though. The Core. What's this about again? I don't remember this one. I don't remember this film. Yeah, I don't remember this one. So, we're gonna move on, because I don't remember that one. The Country Girl. This is a pretty good film with Grace Kelly and Bing Crosby, dealing with Crosby as a washed-up singer who wants a comeback, and Grace Kelly is his wife, who is dealing with her own issues. And again, it's interesting to see how the two are looking for a way out of their predicament, and everything that they're trying to accomplish, and they don't even know if they'll be able to do it successfully, but they still have each other, and that is underrated. Couples Retreat. Okay, I liked Vince Vaughn. I do. I said I liked him. I think his movies are fine. He's not perfect, but he's okay. Actually, this movie is not bad terrible. It's alright. If you want to see a vacation movie where we're vacationing in Bora Bora, then you might actually like this film. It's actually a decent vacation movie. It's a lot better vacation movie than a lot of Adam Sandler's movies. Actually, this is a Walmart exclusive. Weird. It's not terrible. I've seen worse. Courageous. I don't have a problem with Christian movies. I really don't. I don't have a problem with them. I do watch them sometimes, and this is probably Sherwood Pictures' best film. If you don't know who Sherwood Pictures is, they are a independent film company. They were stationed in Albany, Georgia, at the Sherwood Baptist Church, and they made their first film, Flywheel, which we'll get to later. And they've made Christian films ever since, and they've all become successes. And this is actually my favorite of her films. It's a film dealing with honoring not only your partner, in this case the police force, but also being a loyal father and being a honest father to your family. And it's pretty good. Here's one, Crash. This is one I was talking about earlier with 21 Grams and those kind of ensemble movies. You have Sandra Bullock, Don Cheadle, Matt Dillon, Brendan Fraser, Terrence Howard, Ludacris, Ryan Felipe, Michael Pena. This is a film dealing with how one accident can change the lives of all these people. And some people are like, this movie's not the best film in 2005, it's Brokeback Mountain. Yes, I know about what happened, how it won Best Picture 2005 instead of Brokeback Mountain. But here's the thing. This is still a good movie, regardless. I'd say it's like a tie between that and Brokeback Mountain. It's kind of a tie, really, for what is considered the best film. Crazy Heart with Jeff Bridges and Maggie Gyllenhaal. That's another... Why... The sticker thing again. Why did I do that? Anyway, this is not one of my favorites at all. I think it's just okay. I think it's just alright. It's not great, but there was another movie that came out before that has similar plot. It was called Tender Mercies with Robert Duvall, who's actually in this movie, surprisingly. It's not my cup of tea, for sure. Crazy Rich Asians, a rom-com that actually tried to be different. It tried to be a different type of rom-com, but it's not one of those types of movies where you're sitting there going like, it's doing the typical cliches and stuff. No, not really. This movie was actually kind of historic because I believe it was the first all-Asian rom-com, I believe. I think they're from China? Not China, Singapore, that's it, Singapore. And, like, we're trying to get a wedding over there, and it's pretty good. The Crazies. This is a remake of the George Romero 1973 film. And even though I've never seen the original, I did like the remake. It's funny. It's actually kind of funny because this movie, I didn't think I would like it, but I ended up liking this. It's sort of a biochemical warfare kind of film. But again, I'm not going to give too much away because I want you to check it out for yourself. Oh yes, here's a gem right here. Creature from the Black Lagoon. If you've ever seen The Shape of Water, this is the inspiration. This is a fantastic horror film that came out in 1953. 1953? 1954, I'm sorry. This is a fantastic film, part of the Universal Classic Monsters series. Crywolf. This movie sucks. This movie's terrible. This movie is so stupid. It's really bad. These college kids, like, they think of this cure and it's like, no. It's terrible. I'm sorry. It's just really bad. Not this, Cujo. Cujo was actually a solid Stephen King story with sort of a terrifying idea of man's best friend betraying them. And I have to say, it actually turned into sort of a claustrophobic thriller at one point because the thriller aspect is like Dee Wallace and her son are stuck in this car while Cujo is like trying to attack them. And yeah, this movie really, it does a good job. It's creepy, scary, it works. So is Creepshow. Creepshow is another one that, it's like an anthology horror film, kind of like VHS I mentioned earlier, but this one is fantastic. Some of the stories in this film are brilliant. Like there's this one involving this meteorite that like turns everything into fungus. Algae. I mean, not algae. It's like ooze, like his ooze substance. And then you have Leslie Nielsen as this terrifying sociopath. And then you have this guy who he is afraid of bugs. And this movie has a lot of, it's almost like a horror comedy in a way, but it works. It absolutely works. I don't know what the hell that is. What was that? Cursed? I don't know what that is. The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. I was kind of surprised when I found this on Criterion. Kind of surprised. This is a film directed by David Fincher about a guy who ages backwards. That's really all it is. It's not... I haven't seen this in a while, actually. I haven't seen it in a while.